you know, the mayonnaise and the onions and paprika, and, you know, all the accoutrement. And then by the time I was done, I just really didn't feel like eating it.
I can imagine.
And I didn't have any bread. So, you know, it was pretty good. It was a good weekend.
Sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was fine. It was
Sounds
good.
really fun. Cool.
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 It feels like a bag of sand.
Well, instead of having intercourse, you could have outer course.
Outer course? What's that?
Yeah, what is that?
Well, outer course is anything that isn't vaginal intercourse.
I prefer vaginal intercourse.
He really does.
It feels like a bag of sand.
Hey man, got a big box of porn for you.
Feels like a bag of sand.
Hey man, got a big box of porn for you.
Woo! It's up! Drop it. Power panel. Cenk Uygur, John Idola, David Schuster. Power. All right. All right, guys. So fun show ahead for you guys. Fun clips about Donald Trump, stories about Ted Cruz, Elon Musk, Will we be making fun of all of them? Ding, 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 correct. We have a winner if you answered yes. We will, and then of course, later in the program, is honking your horn a First Amendment right? Is it freedom of speech? An actual court case. And there will be one here as well. So you guys will get to decide. You'll be the Supreme Court on this one. All right, fun for everybody. Yes. Johnny Pie.
I think it is a right, and I think it's acceptable to force you to pay $8 a month to be able to honk it. It's still speech, anyway. With that said, let's start mocking people now, starting with this.
If the Republicans are able to hold the state house and reclaim the state senate, then maybe it's possible to get rid of 45 days of early voting in Virginia. 45 days. I mean, there are several things that they can do. They can get rid of same-day registration, but they can't do that now because the Democrats still hold the state senate.
The person you just heard from was Cleta Mitchell, who's important for a couple of different reasons. First of all, she was involved in the Trump legal team that tried to prosecute their court cases having to do with the big lie back in 2020. So if you're just curious how good of a lawyer she is, she willingly chose to be involved in that effort, and you remember how it went. But importantly there, she's not talking about 2020. She's not talking about their grievances about past elections. She's talking about the ways they want to make the future elections unwinnable for the Democrats. There was nothing there about new ideas, nothing there about motivating voters. All of it, and you'll see more soon, is about trying to stop as many people as possible from voting, but in particular, young people, which we're gonna be focusing on. Before we get into more of her video though, here's a little bit of the context. She was giving a presentation at the Republican National Committee donor retreat in Nashville on Saturday. The presentation that she was giving had more than 50 slides and was labeled "A Level Playing Field for 2024." Offered a window into a strategy that seems designed to reduce voter access and turnout among certain groups, including students and those who vote by mail, both of which tend to skew Democratic. So that's the idea. Here are a few of her ideas.
Virginia, we have a great task force in every county in Virginia, and we have a great statewide coalition. The governor just signed a bill yesterday that does away with signatures on absentee ballot applications and ballots, and now it has to be the last 4 digits of the social security number and a birth year. And we need to make sure that there's transparency and people are watching and verifying. That makes Virginia back in play, frankly, to be able to have some authentication. And again, having first day in-person voting campaigns. Wisconsin is a big problem because of the first day, because of the polling locations on college campuses. There are 501c3s. Their goal for the Supreme Court race was to turn out 240,000 college students in that Supreme Court race. And we don't have anything like that, and we need to figure out how to do that and how to combat that.
She's interested, hypothetically, into both of those things, how to motivate the voters, I guess, but then also how to combat it. And I think we all understand where she's going with that. She doesn't like that the polling places are on college campuses. She doesn't like that it's so easy to vote. She doesn't want it to be easy to vote. She doesn't want those college students to vote. It's really as simple as that. I think, look, I don't know on any given day how many people are watching our show for the first time. Maybe they're just beginning to tune into political news. Like, this might come as a big surprise to you. You look at the picture of her in there and she looks like the most benign person in the world. But what she is doing is getting together in secret, except thanks to Lauren Windsor for leaking the video, to coordinate with other powerful Republicans to try to stop as many people from voting in as many ways as possible. Getting rid of the polling places on college campuses because they have no game plan to get the students to vote for them. They just don't want the students to vote at all. They want to stop the early voting. They want to stop the same day registration. They want to make it as likely as possible that people that do absentee ballots make some sort of minor error in terms of what they've signed so that they can nullify it. Every single bit of this is designed to stop Democrats from being able to successfully vote because that is the only strategy going forward. And they're not really being open about it. This was, after all, a private meeting, but thanks to it being leaked, we know exactly what they're saying behind closed doors.
Yeah, here's my summary of it. They scared, okay? So I'm gonna tell you all about younger voters and how screwed they are, and John's gonna tell you, et cetera. There's a good reason why they're scared. First, let's note that Cleta is a super fun name. Secondly, let's note that Undercurrent keeps breaking story after story and has broken more stories than giant cable news outlets. That's because Lauren Windsor is trying, and giant cable news outlets don't try to break news that make the powerful uncomfortable. Okay, now to the main event. Look, Republicans don't want you to vote. They've been saying it forever and over and ever. In my book, Justice is Coming, I give you quotes from Donald Trump, Lindsey Graham, Paul Weyrich, all these guys who say outwardly in public, well, if we have voting, well, the Republicans will never win another national election. We have to make sure we prevent voting. To give you a sense of one of those and how long back it goes, let's go to the Paul Weyrich video. Now, this is a guy who is probably the most pivotal person in history, certainly in one of the top three, but maybe number one in the conservative movement in basically my lifetime. So he started ALEC, which is the main corporate organization that pushes all the bills at the state level. He started Moral Majority, he started the Heritage Foundation, and listen to what he said now 43 years ago.
They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
There you have it, and they've been following Paul Weyrich's famous comments ever since. Make sure less people vote, less people vote. Screw democracy, we don't want democracy. We don't want majority rule. If we have majority rule, we'll lose. Isn't that interesting? For decade after decade after decade, Republicans always knew that they were the minority. Did mainstream media ever tell you that? Isn't it weird that they didn't? Instead, they framed the country as if they're center right. But now, it's not just that they're losing overall. Man, they are worried to death about younger voters, and they should be. So she mentioned Wisconsin and how they got their asses handed to them in that Supreme Court race there. 240,000 young people showed up. Well, it's not just the ones from college campuses. Listen to what Scott Walker, former Republican governor of Wisconsin, very right wing, said about how worried he is about younger voters.
To me, the larger issue here, we've seen it particularly in Wisconsin, but across the country, is younger voters. In Wisconsin last fall, we saw about a 40-point margin that younger voters gave to the Democrats running for Senate and governor. We saw similar margins in Pennsylvania. Part of the reason why you have John Fetterman in the US Senate, in Arizona, in Georgia, and elsewhere. And just this week in Wisconsin,
Okay, here's what I would add to that. Na 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 na. Okay, so guys, in the short term, you'd be nuts to relax. Trump and DeSantis still have a perfectly great chance of winning the next presidential election. The Republicans have a good chance of winning the Senate. They've gerrymandered the hell out of the country, etc. But that 40-point margin ain't going away. It just isn't. The handwriting is definitely on the wall. So that's why I'm telling you, if you're a progressive, it's impossible not to get discouraged in these dark, bleak times, and it looks like there's no hope and no one fighting for you. But in reality, the cavalry is already here. It's just that no one can see it. It's except the Republicans. That's the great irony of this, because they're seeing it in the numbers super clearly. They're like, stop them from voting. All right, before I go to David, one last graph for you guys, because I love this one so much. Let's go to US presidential election party preference among voters age 18 to 29, the young, okay? So now here's what it's gonna show you. As you see there today, or at least in 2020, this gets wider every single year now. There's a 32-point lead for Democrats that is crushing, gigantic, makes all the difference, and that is the reason that Joe Biden won the election, period. He won because of the young voters, and they showed up 11% more than they did in 2016, and it made all the difference. Okay, now having said that, did you notice the other super interesting thing in that graph? Back in 2020, it was tied. It was tied. And back in 1980 through 88 through 90, the Republicans had the advantage with younger voters. So there is this mythology, again, corporate media, just ignore everything they say because it's just like a cloud of disinformation and propaganda. And they are not left wing, they're not liberal. Again, I talk about it in the book ad nauseum, Injustice is Coming. The media is on economic issues, which is the most important thing, and overall conservative, deeply conservative, lies to you about how conservative the country is when the country is not at all conservative. But so one of the top mythologies is, oh, young people are always liberal, and then when they grow up, they mature and smarten up when they become conservative. Again, I've got data, overwhelming meta studies in the book that shows that is not at all true. Total 100% mythology, has never been true. No, once your political identity is imprinted between the ages of 14 and 24, roughly speaking, it stays with you your whole life, okay? Is it for every person? No. Is it on average? Yes, overwhelmingly so. So that is why not only are young people being progressive now super relevant, they were not always progressive. That's also not true. The young used to be Republican. I know that seems unbelievable, but they were. Now they're overwhelmingly progressive. And by the way, they're not Democrats, they're progressives. There's a big, big difference there. And that's why the Democratic Party, with all their corrupt incumbents, are not super thrilled about this news either. David.
Well, I think it's great we're doing this segment because it is fun to watch the Republicans realizing the demographic time bomb is starting to go off, and we're able to see it in real time. And instead of focusing on, well, maybe we should moderate our positions on, a lot of this has to do with the Dobbs decision, overturning Roe versus Wade, and states, rather than just saying, oh no, now it's up to individual states. Now you hear a number of Republicans and conservatives saying, well, yeah, we said states' rights before, but now, yeah, there should be a national ban on abortion, a national ban on the abortion pill. In Alabama, if you get raped and impregnated, you still can't get an abortion. And this kind of stuff has gone so far to such an extreme, you're starting to see some Republicans, a couple of them out there saying, okay, some of the more moderate Republicans, maybe we need to pull back. Maybe we've gone too far in terms of taking away women's reproductive rights. But instead of having that debate in the Republican Party at the RNC meetings, no, they're having the debate of, well, how can we best interfere with college campuses, with voting? How can we make it more difficult? And to me, that gives away the game. They don't care about the fact that they're moving farther and farther away, even from moderate voters in this country. All they care about is, well, how can we narrow things so that it's only the right-wing, hardcore people who want to go out and vote on the Republican side, and maybe the people who are willing to go through all sorts of hoops and hurdles to vote on the Democratic side.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to jump in, I guess, and be Johnny Downer a little bit. I love the trends. I think it's great. I think why exactly you see this divergence, I think is fascinating. I think part of it has to do with the development of independent media, which was much less prevalent 20 years ago. You're able to give people information they wouldn't have otherwise gotten. But I also think the ability of regular people to communicate via social media, I think has really helped to organize this new wave of labor activism, environmental activism, all of that. I think there's a lot of really interesting things we could dive into there. But in terms of fighting back against it, the Republicans obviously are not just gonna lie down and see their taxes go up so they only have 10 times as much money as they could spend in a human life rather than 20 or 30. They're doing stuff like passing 150 bills they've introduced aimed at restricting ballot access just this year across the country. Two of the more radical proposals include a Texas bill that would allow presidential electors to disregard state election results, and a Virginia bill that would empower a random selection of residents to void local election results. There's something like that in Georgia as well. So both in Texas and in Georgia, they're trying to set it up so that if a couple of these cities, which tend to be more Democratic, dare to vote, then they could just nullify it, not count it, and give the Electoral College votes to the Republicans. So that's fun. They have a lot of different, like you mentioned, the gerrymandering. They do have the gerrymandering that can affect the control of Congress. They have the ability to gerrymander, obviously, state legislative districts as well, which is why you have situations like Wisconsin, where it seemingly doesn't matter how popular progressives get, how popular Democrats get. They have a very small portion of the total power. But then even beyond that, we can flash forward years into this. They're still going to have the fact that small rural states give them completely outsized influence over the Senate. As long as they can hold on to that, they can stop a lot of progress. And even once they can't, they can bake in decades more of control, unearned, undemocratic control, by choosing Supreme Court justices. They've effectively, as long as some people watching this show have been alive, been unable to win presidential elections with the popular vote, and yet they have a supermajority on the Supreme Court. They have more influence after decades of losing at the national level. And so a lot of this, I think, is positive. I think it's also the product of the efforts that regular people make to go out there and convince people of their values and of their policies. So don't stop doing that. But there is so much systematic, structural baked-in protection against evolution and against progress that we need to do something about.
Yeah, I'm gonna give my last comments over to the members. By the way, come do the show with us, tyt.com/join. We'll have the link down below. If you're on YouTube, you can hit the join button, you get it. All right, so Gabby Marita says, how about a compromise? Voting should be exactly as restrictive or permissive as buying a gun. Okay, excellent idea. John Bogino says, is there anything more un-American than trying to stop people from voting? Excellent point.
You can make the case that it's fundamentally American since they've been doing it from the very beginning.
Yeah, but it is supposed to be majority rule. It is supposed to be a democracy, although the Republicans, by the way, that's why they have that stupid talking point online where it's like, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Yeah, that doesn't mean you can cheat in an election. That's okay, that doesn't really explain anything. All right, Thule McSchooly says, congrats Democrats, this is what you get when you fail to pass voting rights with a full majority, not to mention a slam dunk campaign promise. Exactly what I was thinking on the way here. I forgot to say it. Thank you. I love doing the show with you guys. And Jenks Left Tricep of Fury says, the GOP spent so much time trying to cheat the election system instead of actually passing a policy that would make someone want to vote for them. It sounds exhausting. And that's the main point I wanted to make. She's like, oh my God, they get out of bed and they just vote, these students, it's terrible. Do you need us to build an obstacle course? Something like, do they need to play American Ninja before they get to vote? Yeah, voting should be easy, we live in a democracy. How about you try to earn their vote with better policies? Same thing with immigrants. It has never occurred to Republicans because they hate young people and they hate immigrants. So it never occurred to them to maybe try to get their vote. And that's why they're in the situation they're in now, which is for the first time in a long time reeling. And that is why we've got a little bit of hope now.
Yeah, not to put too fine a point on it, but I think, you can't overstate how angry and infuriated and pissed off young people really are right now. It used to be the case, okay, if this was just, if elections were just about, taxes and economic policy and there weren't any pressing social issues, okay, yeah, in America we have the right not to participate. And there were a lot of Americans who for decades have chosen not to participate in the political process. But I think you're seeing a generation, Jake, and I know you and John have talked about this before, people are far more invested now because Republicans have forced so many Americans to be invested in the political system because you can literally see your rights, especially for women, being taken away before your eyes. And that has infuriated, I think, an entire generation.
100%.
I think it's time for our first break though. When we come back, a little bit of an opportunity to make fun of Donald Trump. Never gonna pass that up, especially on a Friday. We'll be right back.
So first of all, let's win some votes, guys. Speaking of voting, so we got nominated for a shorty. You're thinking, wait a minute, no, it was a Webby. Wrong, that was earlier, and it's still going on. You can do tyt.com/vote to vote for Anna's clip to go viral clip of the year for the Webbies. That would be fantastic. But now we're up for a shorty as well, and that's for the entire network. Damage Report, Indisputable, Unbossed, Watch List, Young Turks, you name it, the entire network up for finalists in news and media. Let's win a shorty award, that'd be awesome. We appreciate it if you can vote now and often. That would be terrific. Just roll out of bed and vote. It's just a click away. It's too easy. The Republicans are trying to stop you right now. Okay, and then don't forget to check out our podcasting network. That's wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, so now let's go to our members. Mickey C. the Silver Dragon says, David, darling of the right-wing white women, LMAO.
You guys are never gonna let me. You're never gonna let me live that down. But you know what? That just means I'm gonna have to go back to, I think it was Memphis or wherever it was, and find those ladies and revisit and see what they think now. Never mind about me, but also about Donald Trump now that he's been indicted and Fox News and all their favorites.
No one cares what they think about Donald Trump, David. We're sending you back to see if you can find those women and see if they're still in love with you. Okay, all right. Now, Dragonfire Mathematician X and a number of you are challenging me on my hope. So he says, or they say, Cenk, I don't agree that the right wing in America will eventually become politically extinct. The Republicans are taking over our education system for precisely this purpose. The model for this is the education and creation of the SS youth in Germany, where they spent 10 to 15 years controlling the education in Germany. When these monsters were children, they're trying to create a new generation of conservatives in the womb. Yes, that is definitely true in terms of their intent. That's exactly why they don't want to teach about racism. They don't want to teach about the fact that gay people exist, etc. And they're trying to take over the schools for that purpose. Will they win? I don't think they're going to come close to winning. I don't think they're going to be able to brainwash all the kids in Florida, let alone the blue states. Oh yeah, there's no racism at all. Look, John mentioned social media there and overall the internet. It's too big a wave. You can't contain it. It's just it's sweeping across the whole country and the whole world. So some teachers now in Florida going, oh, gay people don't exist. Yeah, dude, we have the internet. They exist. They're right there. There's tons of them. Oh, look at them doing that. Oh, interesting. Okay, you're not going to be able to stop it. It's already over. They just don't know it. Litch McConnell agrees with Dragonfire Mathematician X, says, I appreciate the hopium, Cenk, but I have a sincere question. I'm in my 30s and I've been hearing the young voters will save us since I was a small child. How and why is it more true now than then? First of all, you saw the chart that we showed you, the gap is getting wider and wider. Second of all, those younger voters are now not just the 18 to 29-year-olds. Before they were just 18 to 29-year-olds. Now those people have moved to the 35 range, some moved all the way to the 45-year-old range, but the new ones are still coming in and they're all progressive. Now when you put them all together, we're at the tipping point. We're not like, this election is 50-50, from then on it's over.
You been drinking anything today?
No, I hadn't drank in 3 years.
Good for you, congratulations.
Yeah, until today.
Jazzercise.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, and David with you guys. Of course, everybody check out David Schuster on Rebel Headquarters, where he's killing it. You're gonna love those videos. And obviously check out John on Damage Report. That starts our programming at 1 o'clock Eastern every day. So John,
yes,
hit us.
You will not love those videos, but you might love this one.
So interesting to see the IRS make a strange house call. That was the title of the article by the Wall Street Journal. When Matt Taibbi, during his House testimony on Twitter and all of the bad things that the government has done, that is not a coincidence. It's just plain brazen and somewhat stupid. But even more brazen and stupid is the way they have handled me leaking information, which is totally illegal.
Okay, if you're having trouble following what he's saying, I totally understand it. I can barely follow, and I do this as a job. Basically, Donald Trump will take anything that's in the news and he will make it somehow about himself, even if it has nothing to do with that. And so we're gonna return to Donald Trump, but he was talking there about Matt Taibbi, and that's what we need to cover first. So just last month, Matt Taibbi was testifying before Congress about the Twitter files, back when that was a thing. And there was a Wall Street Journal editorial about how apparently, like Trump says in that video, the same day that he was testifying before Congress, IRS agents apparently showed up at his house in New Jersey. Okay, and so apparently the tax man that went there left a note instructing Mr. Taibbi to call the IRS 4 days later. Taibbi was told at a call with the agent that both his 2018 and 2021 tax returns had been rejected owing to concerns over identity theft, which might or might not be true. Either way, it does seem weird to have someone show up to your house about that. Is that really the first way they would try to contact you? In any event, he has since apparently provided the committee with documentation showing that his 2018 return had been electronically accepted at the time, so he'd have no reason at the time to believe that there was anything wrong. And he says the IRS never notified him or his accountants of a problem after he filed that return more than 4.5 years ago. He says the IRS initially rejected his 2021 return, which he later refiled, and it was rejected again, even though he says his accountants refiled it with an IRS provided PIN number. Okay. So that's apparently what has happened, assuming that all of that is true. Certainly a weird, suspicious little situation. It doesn't seem immediately to have much to do with Donald Trump though, does it? But don't worry, Donald Trump is gonna try to connect the two.
I had a done deal before running for president. They broke it. They treated me worse than they treated the Tea Party or the evangelicals. I could have easily made a very good deal with the IRS during my 4 years as president, but I thought it would be inappropriate to do so. Maybe a conflict of interest. I didn't want that. Besides, I already had a deal from before my presidency, a deal which they chose not to honor. So now I'm demanding the original deal without late changes in the rules and regulations. So that deal would be harder to make. Most people would say that after watching the Biden family take advantage of government, I should have made a deal during my term. To me, it was a conflict. I thought it was inappropriate, so I didn't do so. But this is the price you pay for being honest in the USA of today.
It does suck to see someone so just routinely honest, being abused by the system as much as this. I'm gonna keep it real. I follow Trump a lot. I've been accused of having Trump derangement syndrome. So you'd think, and if anyone would know what he's talking about, it might be me, but I don't know what the hell that stuff about a deal is. It sounds sinister, I can say that. It sounds like he was close to doing some illegal stuff, but I guess he backed off of it, so that's good. Why you're like confessing to this in your weird little video, I don't necessarily understand. But before we get to discussion about that, I will remind you that while he is implying that the IRS is uniquely unfair to conservatives, that's why he listed the IRS, which again, he's misconstruing what actually happened. Evangelicals, they were unfair to Matt Taibbi or whatever. I guess they're unfair to him. Well, they were supposed to be auditing him during his presidency. He didn't do that. He had other issues during Melania's pregnancy.
Is he a person with a uterus?
I don't know. So anyway, he was setting up affairs during the pregnancy. So anyway, he didn't get an audit during the first 2 years, and only when the Democrats put pressure on the IRS to actually do something about it did they finally look into him. And we found out, as a result of that, why he might not have wanted to have been audited for so many years. He had foreign bank accounts while president. He paid $750 in US federal income taxes in 2017, which makes his 2020 payment of $0 seem like a lot. He reported no charitable contributions in his last year as president, despite promising to give away his annual presidential salary of $400,000. So conflicts of interest, which he says he wants to avoid, as well as avoiding his tax burden and lying about charity. If anything, the IRS did him a major solid by hiding all of this unethical and potentially illegal stuff for multiple years.
Okay, so I think I do understand what Trump is referring to and the deal he's referring to. I will try to be the Trump whisperer and explain it. But first, Taibbi. If IRS agents actually showed up to his house, that is super weird.
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure I've ever heard of that. And so, but Taibbi's an enigma wrapped in a riddle, tied in a mystery, whatever that saying is. So I don't know, is he not telling us further context to that? Like he didn't tell further context to the Twitter files? Yeah, unfortunately it's possible these days. He used to be such a great reporter. So anyway, that's
maybe it just happened. The way he said it's possible. If it did, it's weird.
It is weird. Okay, so and I'm not trying to hate on Taibbi. I don't think IRS should go to anybody's house. Okay, so now to Trump, which is a funnier and more interesting story. So he starts with a video on Taibbi, and he's like, "They went to Taibbi's house. Now back to me." Okay, I had to deal with the IRS before I got to be president, and then when I was pregnant / president, I could have done the deal, but I didn't do the deal. Hey, first, Donnie, no one has any idea what you're talking about. Like, it's amazing how much people live inside their own head. You know, people always say, "Oh yeah, Donald Trump's living rent-free inside your head." He's living rent-free inside his own head. He's like, the deal, I had the deal, everybody knows the deal, right? Okay, so no, so he cheated on his taxes forever. The IRS has been chasing him forever, and they've been, in my opinion, deeply incompetent, bureaucratic, and scared. Just, if he cheated on his taxes, say he cheated on his taxes, just get to some bitch already, okay? Should have done that a decade ago, well before he even ever ran for politics, because this isn't about politics. You don't get to cheat on your taxes. So, okay, they apparently were gonna do some deal. And they offered it, but he didn't want to take it when he was president. In other words, he thought, I might never have to pay this. I'm just gonna run for president again, I'll win again, I'll delay it for another 4 years. What am I gonna pay them $100 million now for, right? Even if I delayed 8 years, I saved so much money on interest, etc. You'd be a sucker to pay it if you could delay it. But now he's out of time, he's out of options. It's, in my opinion, the IRS is apparently now finally coming for him. And so that's why since it's inside his head, he's like, as you know, with Taibbi, I had to deal with the IRS. And right now they're trying to take my money because I'm a lifelong tax cheat. But everybody knows if you're a right winger, you can cheat on taxes. And the right wing loves the elites, and I'm an elite, so they let me cheat, okay? So that's what that was about, and the guy's such a joker and he doesn't even realize it. David.
I'm an elite and you let me cheat is right up there with if the glove doesn't fit, you must have quit. Bravo, Jen. I also sort of wonder, first on Taibbi, if Taibbi got swatted somehow, or maybe like just somebody just showed up at his house just to frighten him because I didn't like the way he was gonna testify. Who knows? As far as Donald Trump, the thing that first jumps out at me, and is it feels like Donald Trump keeps losing more and more steam on his fastball, right? I mean, he's still got more, he'll lose more charisma than DeSantis will ever gain. But Donald Trump clearly seems to be slowing down right before our eyes. And that's pretty remarkable because I think the thing that carried him was, regardless of your political views, he was somewhat entertaining and he was charismatic when he was running in 2016. He doesn't seem funny anymore. He seems to have lost some of the charisma. And then as far as the deal, I would just be happy if, maybe we could make a deal with him. If he would say, look, I did not uphold the deal I made to protect and defend the Constitution. I'm willing to cut him some slack and say, yeah, maybe the IRS reneged on their deal with you, but you gotta come clean.
Can I ask, maybe this is a stupid question, but very brief, what deal? What is it like? We didn't get his taxes forever. What is this massive deal that he's supposedly doing?
So, John, we don't know the deal. That goes to David's point about how he's like losing touch with reality. So we know that he owed $100 million in taxes, and that's a lot of money to owe. Okay, even if he says he has $10 billion. Even if you have $10 billion, it's just ding on the 100 million. Who cares, right? Yeah. But no, he doesn't have 100 million. He's lost 2 different times. He lost over $400 million because he's the world's worst businessman. So apparently IRS offered some sort of deal to him saying, hey, we'll let you off the hook for, now I'm gonna make up numbers like 50 million or 35 and whatever the number was, right? Instead of the 100 million, that's why you make a deal. And sometimes they do that in order to settle something instead of fighting through it for a decade or 2 decades and never getting any of the money, right? So, but Trump is, to David's point, like so oblivious now and living on a different planet that he thinks everybody knows the deal.
Yeah.
And apparently the IRS has offered him a deal that is not as good now. That's why he's saying, I'm demanding that we go back to the original deal. And he thinks that all of his fans are robots, and there's good reason to believe that. Yeah. And that they will all then go to the IRS and go, we want the original deal, we want the original. And then David Schuster will go and interview them and say, what's the original deal? They're like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, they might just say, well, the original deal might have been in Donald Trump's mind to keep it all quiet, right? He calls the 800 number, just like we can all do, and say, hey, I owe $10,000, but I can't pay it back. Can we cut a deal and make it $7,000, spread it over 2 years? Oh, sure, the IRS will take that. Donald Trump called the 800 number, figured out, okay, yeah, maybe to your point, instead of $100 billion, I'll pay back 70 million. Here's how we're gonna do it. And everything's gonna be kept quiet. But then the courts got involved, and damn it, the courts ordered Congress to get those tax returns, and Donald Trump is mad that his secret was blown. Well, last I checked, even if the IRS wanted to go back to whatever original deal they made with Donald Trump, that's irrelevant because the courts have already said no. It's already, Congress gets this stuff.
Yeah. But David, that's exactly right. And Donald Trump never understands any of that. He doesn't know how the government works at all. He was president for 4 years, never once bothered to ask an assistant, hey, wait, how does this work, right? So, but look, I'll end on this, and this is really important. The real deal for Donald Trump, and I think this is what he's holding in his back pocket. And by the way, also why he might have taken the classified documents. It relates to what a moron he is. But the deal is, he's eventually gonna go to all these prosecutors, in my opinion, this is just my opinion. And he's gonna, or maybe they'll offer it to him. You're not gonna go to prison, but part of the settlement for whether it's in Georgia or New York or the federal case is you pay a penalty, and you cannot run for office again.
Yeah.
Now, then everybody's a winner, right? Because the establishment doesn't want him to run, keep it real. We don't either, but for completely different reasons. We don't want to lose democracy. The establishment doesn't want to lose power, right? And so they're hitting him with every legal avenue that they had. Remember, they had all that stuff the whole time, and they never chose to use it when he was giving trillions of dollars in tax cuts to the rich and corporations. They never used any of this material. Now they're using all the material at the same time. So the MAGA base is not completely wrong that there is a political element to this. They are wrong that he isn't a criminal. He's a lifelong criminal. He's broken so many laws, and he's never been held accountable because he was part of the elites and he was funneling trillions of dollars in tax cuts to them, right? Yeah. But now they're trying to hold him accountable, and Trump doesn't want to go to prison. That scares the living crap out of him. And so at the end of the day, in order to save face, what might happen, it was in a sense my original prediction when he was president, which is I'm just take my ball and go home. Okay, as long as you guys leave me alone and don't put me in jail and don't further humiliate me, I'll go home. Now, I think that America would take that deal, but we'll see if I'm anywhere near right.
Yeah. Well, why don't we turn to something that's thematically linked a little bit. We're gonna move on to the C block and dial back to 2020, the big lie. Take a look at this.
It can't just be, somebody tweeted this. It's gotta be demonstrable facts that can be laid out with evidence, because that's what a court of law is gonna look to, not just an allegation, but actual facts.
So that is a conversation that we only have thanks to Abby Grossberg and her lawsuit against Fox News of Senator Ted Cruz talking with Maria Bartiromo in the days immediately following the 2020 election. And to hear Ted Cruz tell it there, he's being totally logical and sober and reasonable. If you're gonna be claiming that this election was stolen, we're gonna need hard evidence. Interestingly, fast forward a couple of months and he's one of the guys trying to stop the election from being certified in the Senate. So something definitely changed there. Interesting that Fox initially didn't want us to see that video. But there's actually more of Ted. Take a look at this.
And so, I'm hopeful, I hope when Rudy comes on the show tomorrow, he has some of those facts, and I hope the legal team continues to lay out the specific evidence, because that's what it's gonna take to prevail in court.
Fact check, true. That is what it would take. Senator Cruz was a lawyer for a long time. And what he just described is the actual process. It is interesting that behind the scenes, he sounds more tethered to reality about that process than in the way he acts in his public life.
That is interesting. I noticed that too. It puts him in the company of literally everyone else at Fox News and what they actually thought about the big lie. Now, as soon as they go out there to give a speech or they're on the Senate floor, they're broadcasting on Fox News, then all of a sudden they believe all of this stuff. And by the way, he didn't really fill in there. Ted's hopes 4 days after the election was that Rudy Giuliani was gonna come and was gonna lay out all the specific evidence. I think we all remember how that went. And he said that that would be what would be required to win in court. Well, we know that they lost dozens and dozens of times. So if Ted Cruz was questioning whether they had the goods, and then we have a couple of months of truly embarrassing failures from the entirety of the Trump legal team, and then he emerges on the other side ready to try to overthrow the US government anyway, then that is some underhanded, anti-democratic, and completely hypocritical behavior from Ted Cruz.
Yeah, I think this story is telling of Ted Cruz. I think it's telling of Maria Bartiromo, but most especially it's telling of Republican voters, unfortunately. So Ted Cruz behind the scenes sounds like a reasonable person. In front of the scenes, he seems like the least reasonable person you ever met, minus Donald Trump, right?
Margarine.
Okay, fine. He's in the top 10. Okay. So, but behind the scenes, he sounds like a perfectly rational, intelligent person. That's because he actually is an intelligent person. He went to I think he went to Princeton and Harvard Law or something like that. He's just a slimy actor. Like he couldn't make it into Hollywood, so he became like a cheesy political actor. So behind the scenes, he's like, Maria, you know that tweets are not evidence. You need actual evidence to present in court. We might not even have a prima facie case. I hate to go through voir dire on that. So
He'll make up words to prove your point, Cenk.
Okay. And you're like, wait, who is this guy, right? Meanwhile, he's talking to Maria Bartiromo like she's a child.
Yeah.
And that's because he thinks she's super dumb. And so he has to say to her, now Maria, you know tweets are not evidence. They are not admissible in court. Can you say it with me, Maria? Not admissible in court. Rando tweeted is not evidence. Maria's like, huh? She goes on there and she's like, oh my God, there's evidence. There's tweet after tweet, right? So this does not speak well of her. And nothing speaks well of her. She, that's a fourth collateral damage of this story. CNBC had her as a legitimate news anchor for like decades. She's humiliatingly unintelligent. So anyways, now to the Republican voters, the most relevant folks. Ted thinks you guys don't want the truth and can't handle the truth, to quote Tom Cruise. Or no, Jack Nicholson.
No, that's Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, sorry, Colonel Jessup. So he's like, okay, we need real evidence. Oh, we don't have real evidence. And then he goes on TV, he's like, oh, this is outrageous what happened in the election, because he knows his voters don't want the truth. They want lies. They want to be lied to. That's why he's giving them lies. So Republican voters, how about you actually ask for the truth? I know that's like a wild, outrageous thing to ask for in Republican circles, but you ought to give it a shot. Who knows, maybe you'll even like it. David.
It is remarkable, Cenk. I mean, what a great acting job it takes when you realize that your character, your natural personality, and I thought this about Ted Cruz from the beginning, that he is a reasonable guy, that he is a smart man, that he is a smart lawyer, that he understands this stuff. In order to dumb himself down and seem like he's one of these rednecks who doesn't know much, the acting job that it requires to be able to appeal to people who are low information voters, this is remarkable stuff. And to your point about being a slimeball, absolutely, because what he was acting for was the accumulation of power. He didn't really care about whether he'd get an Oscar or an award or anything like that. No, he just wanted to rise through the ranks politically. And if that meant dumbing himself down in the eyes of voters and going along with Donald Trump, because that's the way the winds were politically blowing, even after Donald Trump had criticized Ted, his wife, and his father, he was willing to do that. That's how craven he was for political power. And so yes, he continues acting. And to your point about Maria Bartiromo, the former money honey at CNBC, they would, when she was at CNBC, they would just feed her the information that she would say. She didn't really know that much about economics or about Wall Street or anything like that. And so unfortunately for her, the gig is up when she goes to Fox News, because it's clear for everybody how stupid she is. And obviously clear to Ted Cruz that when he has to explain to her what basic evidence is and is not, that is, I mean, maybe we should be shocked, but maybe it's not that shocking for people who've known Maria Bartiromo through the years.
Really fast before we end, I feel like there needs to be a little bit of balance, because both of you guys, I think, have been pretty brutal towards Maria Bartiromo. So I want to balance it out by giving the perspective of someone who's actually worked with her. Her executive producer, who we found out, thanks to the leaked text messages, said that she should never be put on live TV. I mean, that is brutal.
Thanks for balancing us out in that direction.
I try to be fair.
So much credit. I apologize.
Yeah, but guys, if you don't work in television, you might be thinking, well, what's the difference between live TV and non-live TV? No, they're saying the scripts have to be written out for her, put in the prompter, and Burgundy will read anything in the prompter, but she can't do anything else. If she has to actually ask questions and interact on live TV, like the 3 brain cells melt, and she's like, tweets are evidence. Okay, look, I'm being brutal towards her, but she's earned it. She's one of the top liars about the 2020 election, and can't seem to tell fact from lie if her life depended on it. It's stunning to watch her struggle on live TV, trying to like connect one thought to another. She's like, how do I do this? I can't tell. And we're not the only ones who think that. Producers who work with her every day think that.
Yeah. With that said, we have to take our second break. When we come back, Elon Musk challenged the internet to do something, and we're gonna take a look at their success in accomplishing it.
Stupid. Stupid.
All right, back on TYT. All right, first, let me tell you about Rashad a little bit. Rashad Ritchie, of course, host of Indisputable, it follows Damage Report on our network, is also on SiriusXM Urban View. So check him out on Sundays, channel 126. Dr. Rashad Ritchie show, Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. He's already the top-rated show there.
Damn.
Like Rashad is invincible. He's indisputable and invincible. So make sure you're checking out his show.
That's the spin-off show.
Yeah, it's crazy how good he is. All right, then I'm gonna tell you about the Black Media Honors. They've been hosted by the amazing Bradley Evans and Rob Malloy. The 2023 Black Media Honors celebrates Black excellence in traditional and digital media broadcasting, journalism, and more. And Dr. Rashad Ritchie has received the Global Icon Award in 2021, recognizes his impact in urban media and beyond. So if you want to find out more, blackmediahonors.com, blackmediahonors.com. That's super cool that they do that. We love supporting it, so check that out. Okay, and tonight I'm going to be on Chris Cuomo's show on News Nation. So make sure you're checking that out wherever you can see News Nation. I'm sure on all the platforms. And so that show's on at 8 o'clock Eastern. I'll be on around 8:30ish. Okay.
Jeff, what's the topic? What are you talking about?
We're talking about Biden and whether he should run and whether he should be primaried. I'm going to be up against a more traditional Democrat who says no, he is so good. He should not be primaried at all. It should be a coronation. So that'll be an interesting discussion. I think you'll enjoy it. Okay, Eclectic Miscellanea writes in our member section, and it's not just the Republicans either about the voter suppression. Democrats aren't much better in terms of supporting majority rule. They've argued in court they could rig or ignore primary results. They pour millions into races to slander progressives and prop up less popular incumbents. Yes,
that's true.
It's because money rules everything around us. Check out chapter 4 of Justice is Coming. You'll know exactly why Democrats do that. Uriah Heap says, do you want young people to vote for you? How about canceling student debt or a nonprofit college system that doesn't require $100,000 of debt, or just once having the common decency to speak at our needs and not down to them, not too hard? It is very hard for Republicans. They're like, well, how would it help corporations to help average American citizens who are young? You guys are too young to even donate to my campaign. It wouldn't help at all. It's the corruption. It's always the corruption. Weird Al Dragonovich says, Cenk, I've been watching TYT since 2011, ever since I found you on MSNBC. You changed my life with one sentence: our representatives don't represent us. You should write a book about politics, call it Equitable Fairness in a Due Process. Process is on the way with a more catchy and simple.
Stupid.
Back on TYT, Cenk, John, and David with you guys. I was reading a member comment during the social break, and we ran out of time. We just wanted to tell you. He was saying, well, you should write a book about these things. I did. Good news.
Prove it.
You can pre-order at tyt.com/justice. And the great Dim Witty also wrote in our member section. I think the question I'm asking is, why would anyone not be in love with David Schuster?
Wow, man, people are really friendly on a Friday. I gotta say, I gotta come back more often.
Yeah, it's like a Trump rally up in here. In terms of how friendly they are.
Schuster rally, I like it.
How little do they know?
All right, and by the way, thank you to Chris Burst for gifting 5 Young Turks memberships and Rockin' a Wall for gifting 10. You guys are amazing.
Damn.
And MK just became a member, so MK, welcome to the show. We like doing it with you.
I loved your ultra. Anyway, let's jump into some fun news. About a week ago, billionaire Elon Musk has offered online to give 1 million Dogecoin to anyone who can prove the validity of the rumor that's been going around on the internet for a number of years that his family made a bunch of money in the emerald mine business. He responded to Doge Designer because I never want you to forget that despite the fact that he is the richest man in the world, his life is responding to accounts called Doge Designer. So Doge Designer had said that he would offer 69,000 or whatever, and I say he because it is. He responded, I will pay $1 million Dogecoin for proof of this mine's existence. Okay, now this is not the first time that he has indicated that he is frustrated with the presence of this rumor online. He's previously said the fake emerald mine thing is so annoying. Like, where exactly is this thing anyway? Now, we have a person who popped up and I think provided some pretty compelling evidence of its existence. But before we get to that, I do want to mention that in the same way that he's frustrated with the existence of the rumor, I'm frustrated with his frustration because he doesn't get to be frustrated that it's out there. It's out there because of him. Back in 2014, he did an interview with Forbes and he bragged about the existence of the mine, saying, this is gonna sound slightly crazy, but my father also had a share in an emerald mine in Zambia. You said it, buddy. Now that's not the only thing. He also talked about the private jet that used to fly around, regular guy stuff. But he was the one that launched the rumor. Now, if you go to search for this article, it's no longer available on their regular website. It was taken down. There's never been any explanation as to why it was, but I think we can kind of guess. It is still, however, available on the Internet Archive, so you can see it there. Also, by the way, he used to routinely tell an anecdote about how he sold some of his father's emeralds to Tiffany & Company while his dad was sleeping. See, that article proves two things. One, that there were emeralds and that he profited off it, and two, that when he was younger, he was John Mulaney. But anyway, this story is not fundamentally about Elon Musk, it's about Errol Musk, his dad, who's been in the news a few times over the past few years. So he did an interview with the US Sun, and he claimed that not only did the mine exist, but that was what got him and his son sort of launched on their way in terms of riches. So describing the moment that he heard that his son had challenged the internet to prove this, he said, when I read that, I wondered, can I enter? Because I could prove it existed. Elon knows it's true, all the kids know about it. My daughter has 3 or 4 emerald pendants. Elon saw them at our house. He knew I was selling them. By the way, he provided pics of the precious gemstones, which he says came from the mine. He says what Elon is saying is that there was no formal mine. It was a rock formation protruding from the ground in the middle of nowhere. There was no mining company. There are no signed agreements or financial statements. No one owned anything. The deal was done on a handshake with the Italian man at a time when Zambia was free for all. Not even he knew exactly where the border was. At that time, it was like the Wild West. So that really, I think, paints a picture there. You might have thought that it was bad in some way that their family made it rich off of gems, but everything reads there as the most disgusting sort of colonial exploitation. They didn't even basically have a legal system. I just went in there, I didn't even deal with their people. I talked to some Italian dude, and then we just took their mines and gave them literally a couple of dollars a day for their labor. So the whole thing, incredibly gross. But he goes on to say that the reason he thinks that Elon keeps pushing back against the rumor, which he started, is Elon's main concern is not to appear to be a trust fund kid who got everything given to him on a plate. That's what his naysayers are pushing. It's not true. Elon took risks and worked like blazes to be where he is today. So he's not even being too hard on his son, although he has been quoted in recent years as saying that he's not proud of him. He said, sure, we got a bunch of money off of the gems, but he still worked hard. The emeralds helped us through a very trying time in South Africa when people were fleeing the country in droves, including his mother's whole family, and earning opportunities were at an all-time low. That's all. I'm sure that if you were to dig into the context that led to the people fleeing, what he's talking about there, nothing about that would be bad either. But anyway, what do you think? He seems to have won. He should get the $1 million Dogecoin, I think.
Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting story, and I don't think that it's a clear-cut loss for Elon Musk. And so let me explain. First of all, is Elon Musk a liar? Yes, and so look, you can argue that everyone lies around the edges at a minimum, right? But this is not around the edges. He's trying to create a mythology that he came to the country with only $2,500 in his pocket, and he just built everything by himself. And he says he had $100,000 in debt when he left college, and so just from the ground up, the only thing he had was 2 bootstraps. That's all he had, right? So he's lying on purpose for that. And in this case, you can see because his dad, man, he just totally destroyed this lie. The dad says, yeah, there's no documents on it. It was on a handshake and we barely remember where it was near the border. So Elon Musk knows for a fact that it's super hard to prove. And that's why he was like, oh yeah, I'll give money to anyone who could prove it. So wait, you know it's true, but you think it can't be proven, so you want to lie about it to try to make yourself look smarter, better, etc., right? So buyer beware, that's the kind of lies that Elon Musk tells, and it appears on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So, okay, but so where's the catch? Where's the silver lining for Elon Musk? Well, his dad explained, no, we did have the emerald mine, and I gave Elon money, and when he wanted to go to America, it was my idea. I suggested it. He went. I gave him the money to go, etc. And then at some point, his dad sells a yacht to give him more money and his brother more money. And at another point, he sends him $115,000. Okay, so this idea that Elon Musk like, should I work at McDonald's or Wendy's for a little extra cash? Oh no, right, my dad sent me $115,000.
Decades and decades ago.
Yeah, that was, like 1980s, early 1990s. Okay, so understand that. Again, you're wondering where the hell's the silver lining? Well, to me, I didn't know how much the emerald mines were, right? Because it was so vague. Elon Musk mentioned it once, that's where it comes from. But now we have a sense of scale. So I didn't know if he had like $100 million or $100,000. And it turns out, because his dad's clearly not pulling punches, I don't think his dad's lying about this. No, it wasn't $100 million. He got a major leg up that 90% of people, 95%, maybe 98% of people don't have, right? And his dad had yachts and mines and all that stuff, but he wasn't like Trump. Trump's dad gave him $413 million. Whew. Okay, Trump during the original 2016 campaign was like, no, just got a small loan in 1970 of $1 million, just a small loan. No, $1 million is not a small loan. And back in 1970, that was an unbelievable amount of money, but even that's not anywhere near true. No, your dad gave you over $400 million. And what did Trump do with it? He bungled it away because he's a fool, right? And Elon Musk, okay, so it turns out his dad helped him a lot, but he wasn't mega rich. So that's my honest take on it, and I'm kind of interested by that. I didn't know that. It gives me context. David.
I find it amazing that a guy who is the wealthiest man on the planet can have such huge insecurities, and maybe we shouldn't be surprised, but this idea that, Freud would have had a field day with Elon Musk even before the story came out. What is it about? It's not a binary choice that you can't be, your dad gives you money or you work really hard. Both can be true. Sure, he got some money from his dad and they helped get out of South Africa, fine. And he worked really hard out of college to do what he's doing now. Yeah, that's fine. It just, the idea that, Elon Musk has a habit of making stories and making things worse, taking Twitter, making it worse. He has this great idea for Tesla, but he treats his employees horribly. So there's a stink factor with Tesla. And now a story that could have been, hey, I was a kid. My parents helped me out. Hey, my parents helped me get out of Southern Indiana. Big deal. Maybe a little different from Elon Musk, but okay, most people would accept that your parents are gonna help you do something. And then you say, look, I didn't have any control of what my parents were doing. They helped me get out of South Africa and I worked really hard after college, and that's that. And it's not a big story, but Elon Musk makes it a bigger story, almost reaffirming his own insecurities, because now everybody's questioning, Elon Musk is so insecure, and what is it about the gems that bothers him so much? And is he really so fearful, and why is it? It's strange.
Yeah, Elon Musk, I think, is the greatest example ever of something that we've seen other examples of. I think Trump is a little bit of this. If Elon Musk had just not opened his mouth, think about the reputation he would have right now. If the last 5 years or so, he hadn't spent every day desperately blank. Just everything, desperately wanting to be thought of as funny, desperately wanting to be thought of as cool, as hip, or whatever, connected. He is desperate about everything. He is try hard in vaguely human form. If he had just not done that, if he had stopped trying to have right-wing grifters be interested in him, if he had just done the work, or I should say, let the engineers and scientists who produce the cars and the rockets, because he has no training in that area, do the work, then he would be the Tony Stark of the modern era or whatever. But instead, he keeps talking, and it is impossible for a rational person to watch the decisions he makes, listen to the things that he says, and come away thinking that he's as smart as he wants us to believe he is.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna double down on what David said. My dad helped me, so why don't you give your dad credit? Like, that's the decent thing to do, that's the honest thing to do. But the difference is, for progressives, we think that, yeah, working together is the right idea, and that no one truly ever does it, quote unquote, on their own. You always need some help, and you should appreciate the help that people give you. But for the right-wing mind, no, it's all me. I want all the credit. I don't want my dad to get any of the credit. I don't want anybody else to get the credit. I don't want the actual story out there. I want extra credit that I didn't even deserve. Oh, I started out as a pauper. It was a tale of two cities, and I came up anyway and conquered the world. All right, if you're gonna be a weirdo liar, you would have gotten tons of credit anyway. You went from like a guy who's had a rich dad, but wound up becoming the richest man in the world. It's still a big jump, but nope, never satisfied. It has to be all about him. That's how the right-wing mind is.
And if we could just really fast go to the last graphic to remind, one reason why he might not want to give too much credit to his dad is I'll remind you of something we covered a year or two ago. His dad had 2 children with his stepdaughter. Just, it's not attached to the mind thing. I just think it's noteworthy.
Jesus, man. That is a brutal thing.
Talk about daddy issues. Well, maybe they're understandable now that he doesn't want this association with his father because he's repulsed by his dad's sexual peccadillos, and so it's a little more understandable. But man, this guy needs to get in front of a Freudian psychiatrist.
Yeah. I mean, clearly there's some issues there, okay? And clearly his dad's not like the world's greatest guy either. He just happens to be brutally honest in this case. Okay, we unfortunately are out of time. Everybody check out David on Rebel Headquarters. Everybody check out John on Damage Report. We have an amazing second hour for you guys, including the fun story of, is honking free speech? The courts have weighed in. Okay, we'll be back.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
Indisputable has been named the fastest growing news TV show in the United States of America, compared to all shows on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and roughly 30 others. What do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable. Donald Trump radicalized citizens. He's the chief terrorist. Republicans still want you to think that critical race theory is the greatest evil that can happen in K-12 education. It's not even talk. I guarantee you this, David. If he would have taken a knee during the national anthem to bring awareness to the need for more money for cancer research in America, he would not have had that response. It was the fact that he took a knee for black folk and brown folk. You rather pick the voters because you're scared of the voters picking the politicians. It frightens you. But we coming. When you are in a privileged position, equality looks like oppression to you. The Karenicity runs deep in this one. We provide a mirror for reflection and a mirror for correction.
So what if I have 35? Don't hit me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
So let's put up the graphic of this Karen in peak performance. Boom. They want anarchy so they can start creating their own rules.
Can you share with me some examples?
When they were running around during the terrorist attack on January 6th saying, hang Mike Pence. So those are the people I'm talking about. That's a problem, correct? You work for Mike Pence, stand up for the guy. Do not allow the ideology of politics to evaporate the humanity that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, so I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reformed in this country, so I won't stop. And you won't stop either.
Stupid.
Drop it. All right, we got a power panel. Cenk Uygur, Adrian Lawrence with you guys. Adrian does Overruled on Rebel Headquarters. Everybody check out that show. Alonzo Bowden will join us later, I believe. Okay, so Adrian, we got breaking news, so let's do it.
Yes. Indeed we do, that's right. The US Supreme Court determined that access to the abortion drug mifepristone can stay available. It is legal during the challenges that will eventually go out before the court. Yes, that's right. The abortion drug will continue to be 100% legal and available until the full case and controversy can be litigated before the court. Now, this decision made by the US Supreme Court, what it does is it blocks the ruling of the Trump-appointed Texas federal judge, Matthew Kacsmaryk, which we'll talk about later, who suspended the FDA's approval of the drug. And in the Supreme Court's decision today, deciding to go ahead and stay Kacsmaryk's ruling, well, it was Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito Alito, who both were the only ones to dissent. Both of these conservative judges would have allowed Kaczmarek's ruling to go into effect, which would effectively ban the sale of mifepristone during the time the issue was litigated before the US Supreme Court. Now, Stephen Mazie, who covers SCOTUS for The Economist, tweeted this. I believe it's graphic 9. He said that Justice Alito says declining to grant the stays would have simply rolled back the clock back on how mifepristone may be administered, narrowing the window from 10 weeks to 7, banning the distribution of mifepristone through the mail, requiring 3 in-person doctor visits simply. Of course, this is something that I would expect Alito and Thomas to say. And I know that Cenk, you too had predicted that this would not only be the case, right? But also that that there would be them in the dissent.
Yeah, there's a reason for it, guys. So politics is actually fairly easily decipherable. There's the number one thing that you have to follow is the money. We all know it. Follow the money, you'll get all the right answers. So when everybody panicked over the Kaczmarek ruling, oh my God, they're gonna get rid of the abortion pill. We told you immediately on this show, no, they're not. And we explained why. So let me show you that original clip, and then I will tell you a little bit more context as to why we knew what was going to happen.
Whenever you have conflicting courts from different circuits, it goes up to the Supreme Court, especially on important issues like this. And so which way are they gonna go? It's 63 conservatives filled with religious zealots, so you might think that they might join the religious zealot judge in Texas and go, I don't give a damn about the science, I don't care that it's safer than Tylenol, we're gonna ban it, right? But I don't think so. As we've been saying all throughout, I think that those judges are more pro-corporate than they are, even more so than they are religious zealots. And I think that the Supreme Court eventually will do as their bosses tell them. Their bosses are corporate America.
So that's why we were sure that our side was gonna win on this. And we explained in depth at the time that we progressives do win from time to time, but not because, oh golly gee, Barack Obama was such a progressive or we won elections. No, it's all about the money. We explained that we won on the issue of gay marriage, partly because the country's opinion was changing on it greatly, but that usually doesn't do it. I mean, paid family leave's at 84% and we don't have it. Federal universal background checks are at 97% and we don't have it. So why did we get gay marriage? Because Barack Obama's donors in 2008, his top donors were the banks. In 2012, his top donors were gay rights groups and individuals. So he always follow the money, you'll have your answer. It doesn't matter, none of the politicians give a damn about being progressive or conservative or any of those so-called ideologies. That's all theater. Whoever has more money wins pretty much every single time. And in this case, guys, this is one random judge in the country saying, I'm going to overrule the FDA and say that this drug is not allowed. If that became precedent, every judge in the country, by the way, both on the right and the left, could say, I don't like that drug, I don't like that drug, I don't agree with the FDA on that, and ban drugs all over the place. You know who's not gonna let that happen? Drug companies. And drug companies own all of Washington, including the Supreme Court. That's why it was a super easy prediction for us. In fact, in another segment, I was as specific as which judges would vote which way. And since this is breaking news, we didn't have a chance to pull that clip for you guys, but you could find it on YouTube or Facebook. And I said that Alito and Thomas would vote with the religious fundamentalists, but that Kavanaugh and Gorsuch would not. And that's why they would say that this drug is allowed to be in the country and can't be banned in the way that the conservative judge wanted. Why? Because Alito and Thomas are religious fundamentalists. That is their identity. They care more about that than anything else. But Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and the rest of the justices, including all the other right-wing justices, they are not defined by that. They are defined by their pro-corporate positions. Their religious positions are a tool to get ahead. Oh, right-wingers, I'm on your side. I care so much about abortion. Promote me up the ladder, all right? Put me on the appeals court, put me on the Supreme Court. But the main reason that they got on the Supreme Court is because they said corporations can kill people. Again, this is not hyperbole. We've explained it a number of times, but I'll say it real quick here. Kavanaugh ruled in a case that a trucker, if his company told him that he has to freeze on the side of the road, must freeze to death. Otherwise, the company is allowed to fire him. And Kavanaugh ruled that SeaWorld did not have to compensate an employee that was killed by a killer whale. So they both literally ruled, and they were unique in this, saying that corporations can kill their employees and get away with it. I'm oversimplifying those complex cases, but those were the essence of the cases, and you can look it up and read it yourself to make sure that it is not hyperbole, okay? So that is why, if that's how they got on the Supreme Court, by being the most brutally pro-corporate, they are never going to rule against drug companies. It's not gonna happen. It doesn't matter if the issue is the most important thing in the world to religious fundamentalists, which is abortion. So that's why it didn't matter, even on the most important issue. They're like, our religious values versus corporate profits, that's a no-brainer. Corporate profits are gonna win every time.
Yep, that always seems to be the way it is with these companies and how they have control over our government. Alonso, did you want to say something?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry about the tech. I missed the first part of this, obviously, but I agree with Cenk in that you follow the money. The interesting one now, and it's going to be interesting looking at his past decisions and his future decisions, is Clarence Thomas, right? Because we now know directly where his money's coming from. I mean, it's an attachment to a ultra-rich donor who is a corporate guy and could care less about religion or abortion or anything else. So I think Clarence is actually in a weird place where he's being pulled by both sides, right? The religious fundamentalists and the direct corporate thing. No, they weren't gonna ban this drug, and no, they're not gonna give the power to one judge to ban a drug or to challenge the FDA. But I think the bigger problem we have here is just the idea of, and this goes back to the whole COVID thing, these people challenging medicine and science. They don't know. Like, I have a friend who's a doctor. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna trust my medical degree and 20 years of experience over your anger, over your internet conspiracy site or whatever. And I don't remember in this before, where we have judges questioning the FDA, questioning medical experts just based on what? On their moral values or how they feel? I mean, it's insanity that this should never have happened.
No, it shouldn't have happened at all. And especially a lot of people talking about how it indeed should not have gotten to this point where it first should have stopped with that Texas federal judge, Kaczmarek, because as we just learned, he failed to disclose appearances that he made on a far-right radio show, and they seem to undermine the judge's objectivity. Now, this omission, it went down during the Senate confirmation hearing back in 2019, where now Judge Kaczmarek, who has a lifetime appointment, was supposed to submit all of the evidence of his writings or appearances so that the Senate Judiciary Committee could weigh them, which is the normal process and protocol for any nominee for a judgeship. Well, as it turns out, Kaczmarek didn't tell us about the 2 times that he went on Chosen Generation. It's a radio show which offers a biblical constitutional worldview. In his first appearance on the show, the topic was the homosexual agenda, and this is what the right-wing judge said. I just want to make very clear, people who experience a same-sex attraction are not responsible individually or solely for the atmosphere of the sexual revolution. You know it, it's a long time coming. It came after no-fault divorce. It came after we implemented very permissive policies on contraception. The sexual revolution has gone through several phases. We just happen to be at the phase now where same-sex marriage are at the fore. But through the progression or regression, I think you can see 5 areas where there will be a clash of absolutes between the traditional Judeo-Christian understanding of marriage and the revisionist, redefined vision of marriage that you saw in last term's Supreme Court opinions. Kaczmarek said, before outlining those areas as over tax exempt statuses, adoption services, federal government programs, and discrimination at universities. Now, interestingly enough, those statements were made in February of 2014, which is just about 5 years before Kaczmarek was elevated to the bench. And the judge also happened to complain about the federal government's support of same-sex marriage, even though he had previously worked for DOJ. It really seems that this man takes a lot of issue with anything that's not Christian cishet normative. Am I the only one reading it that way, Cenk?
Oh, yeah. But look, there's the absurdity that we all treat these justices and judges, and he's a judge, not a justice, of course, as like really neutral, and then they go have these confirmation hearings and they all are like, issues? I've never heard of any issues. opinions. Well, I would never have an opinion. I mean, the whole thing's a farce. We all know either they're conservative or they're liberal, and they largely agree with those. They might have a little variance here and there, right? And that's normal. We're all human beings. But overall, the conservatives believe deeply conservative things, and the liberals are usually corporate Democrats. Okay, so that's how it goes. And yet the media plays this farce. And I remember so well when Justice Roberts was up for approval in front of the Senate, and he's like, I just call balls and strikes. Whatever's the fairest. I'm like, dude, you have a whole judicial history where you ruled with the right wing 98% of the time. So the right wing's always throwing strikes and everybody else is throwing balls. But the media and all the politicians go along with it like, oh yeah, oh okay. He says he's just throwing balls and strikes. We can't tell who he is. We don't know how he's gonna rule in the Supreme Court. We all know how they're gonna rule. So Kaczmarek he's a religious fundamentalist. Of course. Does he believe that gay people shouldn't have the same rights as straight people? Of course. Should you be on the court if you think that different Americans should not be treated equally, that they should all be treated depending on their identity and they should have different sets of laws? No, you shouldn't be. But unfortunately, a lot of people in this country do believe that. So it is what it is. The right wing doesn't really believe in democracy. They don't really believe in equality or equal rights. And there's gonna be a ton of right wing justices. Just don't pretend. It's absurd. Just keep it real, Alonzo.
Well, and I have to laugh because whenever these judges come across with their religion, with their I don't even know what you call it, their moral values or whatever you call it, their leader is Donald Trump. Okay, now I'm no expert on religion, but I'm gonna go with "Thou shalt not commit adultery" is in the top 10, and he's in court right now for committing adultery. Their moral decisions, their moral compass is so off, you can't take it seriously. And it's the same thing with ethics. Of course, he didn't say he was on this right-wing website or talk show, whatever, because it would be held against him. The only problem is it's not held against them. There are no ethics panels. They're not being held to any standard. And again, this goes to the highest court, right? The Supreme Court, where we have justices who are making decisions based on religion. We had Amy Coney Barrett talking all this stuff about the man is in charge at home, and then you're like, oh, so what if your husband says it's a different decision than you make? And that question doesn't get answered. The problem of mixing religion and government, it just doesn't work, and it's not supposed to happen. Unfortunately, it does, and the justices, the judges, they are supposed to only call balls and strikes, but they obviously don't. It would be like each umpire just deciding, my strike zone is the right half of the plate, or my strike zone is the left half of the plate. The game doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
no, it doesn't. Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, I just want to say too, and it's not just the usual stuff about people with same-sex attraction and the sexual revolution where people just get to decide what they want to do with their own life and body. Yeah, it's ruining America, right? Well, it wasn't just that stuff. If you noticed in the quotes that Adrian read to you guys, he's against no-fault divorce. Why? Should we fight even more during divorces? Like, no, it's your fault. It's your fault. That sounds really healthy for the family. Such a weirdo thing. Like, he's going back so old school. Yeah, the Bible's against divorce, but most Christians gave up on that a long time ago because half of them got divorced. Right? But this guy's still fighting that fight. He's saying we're too permissive on contraception. He's still fighting that fight. So of course, a guy who bases his worldview on fundamentalist religion is not going to make rational decisions on the courts based on the facts in front of him or science. He's going to make it based on his worldview, which is, hey, whichever rabbi came up with this 2,500 years ago was right. You need to put a goat skin on before you have sex, and that's oh no, wait, don't put the goat skin on before having sex. Contraception bad. So, I mean, America, do you still want to be ruled by these guys?
Well, I definitely don't. By the way, I think with the whole no-fault divorce thing, I think what he's I'm basically saying is that he wants you to only be able to divorce if you have a rationale or reason for it, that people shouldn't just be able to say, no, I don't want to do this anymore, that you need to point to something that's like adultery or abuse or something. But it all definitely sounds like it's ways in which to control the destiny of a woman and also to ostracize any kind of marginalized group, which very much sounds quite right wing. But I guess what, we'll have more right wing agenda and conversation about it after we get back.
Here. First, a random note on the no-fault divorce. Adrian's 100% right, of course, about the legality of what that means. But I'm always like, what a weird thing, right? That's the Republicans love controlling our lives. There has to be things like adultery or abuse. Why? What if they don't want to be married anymore? No, this government will not allow you to get divorced. So we have to stay together even though we don't like each other. Yeah, you have to stay together. That's so weird. That's so weird. Why don't you get that F out of our lives? And then there's, the left wing wants to control your life and make you drink Starbucks coffee. Absurd. Anyway, all right, let's go to YouTube super chat. Iroquois Pilskin writes, and if they make a deal with Donald Trump to take his ball and go home, they really have learned nothing. He never honors his deal. That's the art of the deal. I hear you, but at the same time, if it's the kind of deal that I'm talking about where it's a settlement in a trial, he doesn't have a choice because he's legally not allowed to run for office in that fact pattern. And as I said earlier in the show, when I hypothesized on that, let's be clear, that's a fact pattern I've made up, okay? I think that would be a deal that all sides would take, but I have no evidence, I don't have any knowledge of them even proposing a deal like that. Just want to be super clear. All right, Brandon Dayton says, Cenk, the DNC will not sanction any debates. I was on a virtual call last night. Interesting. I think it's time that independent media host debates, start a fundraiser. I'll give you my money for it. I'm begging. So guys, we've tried to put together debates before, and we in fact raised money for a climate debate in 2020, etc. The problem is the candidates won't do it. They're, because the DNC has sanctions, etc., and whoever's leading or whoever's the incumbent is like, I would never debate anyone, especially in a context where we can get real questions from real journalists. No, we like the mainstream guys. They frame everything in a pro-corporate way that they're much more comfortable with. So that's the holdup. Nicholas Mayer says the story about Starship exploding seemed like an excuse to attack Musk and really discounted the years of hard work the SpaceX team did. He's referring to a story from yesterday and he's criticizing us. I'm no Musk fan. Space is not easy. I expected more from TYT. Nicholas, I love you for trying to keep us honest, brother. And I hear you, and I thought I made it clear, but I guess I didn't make it clear enough. No, of course, there's a giant company with tons of engineers. It's not just about Elon Musk, but thank you for writing that in. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Adrian, and Alonzo with you guys. Adrian's got more news.
Yes, indeed. And it's coming from Tennessee, which has already been through a lot, of course, with the tomfoolery of its legislature. And now it's just a little bit more. A top state representative from Tennessee busted sexual harassment of an intern. Yeah, Tennessee Representative Scotty Campbell, that's a vice chair of the State House Republican Caucus and one of the leaders behind the vote to expel the Tennessee Three, resigned yesterday after it was revealed that the state's House Ethics Committee had secretly convicted him of sexually harassing at least one legislative intern. Check out this tweet from Huffington Post editor Philip Lewis. He said a GOP leader who voted to expel 3 Dems who held a gun violence protest on the House floor was recently found guilty of sexually harassing interns. Yeah, that's right. Representative Scotty Campbell saw no consequences as a result of his actions. Thank God he stepped down. And really, let's talk about the projection here, because as far as the alleged offenses, well, in an email given to Nashville's News Channel 5 by a family member, the victim provided a detailed account to officials at her university about her experiences with Campbell. Now, Campbell allegedly offered to give her cannabis gummies and to see her tattoos and piercing. The email also suggests that far more went on, despite her not wishing that to the case. This here, I told him absolutely not, and he begged me for several hugs. I was getting progressively more afraid and uncomfortable. He then reached out his hand towards me and grabbed me around my neck. This sounds like assault as far as I'm concerned. Now, a State House Workplace Discrimination and Harassment Subcommittee also went on to find this. Campbell made comments to a legislative intern about her and another 19-year-old intern about imagining they were performing sexual acts on one another. The legislature has also spent potentially thousands of dollars in taxpayer money to move one of the interns out of her apartment building where Campbell also lived and to place her in a downtown hotel for the remainder of her internship. Now, at the time that they alerted the speaker, well, who happened to remain silent about the whole thing and really said nothing, was looking to overlook Campbell's violations. Seriously, the subcommittee alerted Speaker Cameron Sexton on March 29th that it had determined Campbell violated House policy by harassing a legislative intern, telling the Republican leader that discrimination in any form will not be tolerated. Instead of removing Campbell from his committee assignment, censuring him, or taking other action to hold him accountable, well, Sexton did not respond to the panel's findings, which is interesting. Now, while sexual harassment allegations against Campbell were overlooked, well, the Tennessee GOP really went in the paint in terms of allegations against Campbell, in terms of also their attempt to expel the Dem 3 for fighting gun control. They had no problem coming together to look to expel Representatives Justin Jones and also Justin Pearson, both of whom were fortunately quickly reappointed. But here's what Campbell said when he kind of already found out what was going on with the vote. He said, if you were in court and behaved like those 3 did, you would have been found in contempt of court, Campbell argued during a debate over the expulsion motion. That really shows you what their focus is, that it's problematic if you have representatives who are out there speaking on behalf of the people, uplifting some kind of significant gun reform measure, as opposed to actually behind closed doors, sexually harassing and possibly assaulting an intern. That really does tell you where their priorities are. Cenk?
So this is very predictable. If you watch the Young Turks over the last 21 years that we've been on, it's one story after another after another. We even used to have a segment all the way back in the day called Republican Sexcapades. And we did it every week, and every week there would be a different sex scandal. And it was always from the party of family values. It's not to say the Democrats never have sex scandals, but the Republicans have boatloads of them. They never stop. And the same pattern has held true for decades now. They say, oh, work for family values is so important to hate gay people. I mean, kind of love your children or whatever, and your wife, I guess, whatever. But really, trans people are the problem, and I don't want any drag performances because they arouse me way too much, and I assume that the same is true of everyone. Okay, but I'm the moral one. And then you find out, of course, he's grabbing interns by the neck. He's doing all these disgusting things and asking these 19-year-olds for sexual favors, et cetera, et cetera. That's part 2, happens every time. Then part 3, the Republican leadership goes, it's no big deal, no big deal. I mean, family values. Do we say family values? I mean, we just mean like, hate those people. We don't, the people we hate's the biggest and only value we have. Actual perverts that are targeting 19-year-old girls that are working in their office, that's totally fine. That's guys in power getting what, getting people to serve them. What do you mean? That's the whole country's built on that. And they cover that up. And meanwhile, they're like, oh, 2 black guys spoke up. Well, we don't like them speaking up. Oh, they're speaking out against our gun manufacturers that are giving us good bribes. Campaign donations. Well, I get those young black guys out of here. They're trying to represent actual American voters. Hell no. The pervert, yeah, he's great. Keep him. Oh, God damn it, it was proven completely. Oh, he resigned. Oh, whew, good. Then we don't have to expel him. It's been the same story for 21 straight years. Alonzo.
White male privilege. White male privilege. A middle-aged white man who thinks he's better than people, so he can kick the black people out of Congress because they're not as good as him. And he can treat a young woman any way he wants because, as we know, young women are only to be used for sex. And that's the thinking, and that's the belief, and this is an example of it. And I don't know how you break this cycle. Like Cenk was saying, these congressmen and interns, how many times do we see the same story where it's a total abuse of power, and these women, I'm imagining, are trying to learn about government. Maybe they want to be representatives or work in government one day. I'm not sure what the internship leads to, but they don't have a chance. They don't have a chance because in every legislative body, there is the powerful pervert. And they know about the pervert, and he's been at it for so long. And like Cenk says, they look the other way and they point the finger at somebody else. Don't look at me, hate that person over there. But with this guy, it's an absolute example of he thinks he's above people because they're black or because they're a woman. And he just like, I can treat them any way I want. And now he got caught, and now he'll talk about, being a victim of the woke generation or whatever else. He'll be some kind of victim, like he's the victim here because he's not allowed to behave the way his forefathers did in 1950. That's their dream. I think 1950 was their dream decade where they could just do whatever they wanted to whoever they wanted. They haven't been happy since.
Yeah, and I don't even think that Campbell guy was born in 1950, but I will definitely say that it's rather disgusting that they had to move an intern out of the building because of his behavior. They didn't try to move him. No, they moved this person, physically got all of their belongings and moved them out of the apartment building. And it just really shows you that individuals with power who abuse their power, whether by way of gender dynamics or also class, whatever basis that they're on, are absolutely and utterly disgusting, and they will do so much, yet it's a system that continues to enable them. It takes a village to continue to allow a harassment to exist. So you can't tell me that this was the first intern there in Tennessee that had been on the receiving end of Campbell's nonsense. No, it was just because this young lady went to her university and told members of her university who had more power and could speak up on her behalf.
Wait, did you just say harassal?
Yeah.
I've never heard that word. That's such a fun amalgamation.
That's how I describe them in my book.
Okay, I love it. I love it. Everybody check out Adrian's book, okay? We'll put a link in the description box below. All right, one last thing. I just want to say, Alonzo, thank you for adding to my theory. I explained the 3 stages, but Alonzo's right. There's the 4th stage where they go, poor me, all I was trying to do is have sex with the 2 19-year-old girls who work for me. I'm the victim. Happens every time. And he's also right that for some right-wing males, remember guys, when we talking these generalizations, there's tons of white people that are awesome and they're deeply progressive, there's tons of males, et cetera, et cetera. There's some folks on the right wing that are fine, some. Anyway, but for the guys in power, the right-wing white males who were in power, for them, not being able to dominate or oppress others is oppression for them. They're like, and think about why. Because they think, we used to be able to do that all the time, and now you're taking that right away from us. And they feel like they're getting robbed. They're like, oh, back in the day, if a 19-year-old girl showed up, of course I'd try to get her to do a lesbian show while I was pretending to be in favor of family values. And I would be able to sometimes do worse and totally get away with it. Now you're telling me I can't get away with it. And that's why they feel like victims, because we've taken their right to oppress others away, and they genuinely feel aggrieved about that.
Cenk, really quick, I have to disagree with you, all right? If all us black guys are thugs, then all these white guys are no good.
So, and by the way, that's a good illustration of when stereotypes are on the other foot. It doesn't feel so good, right? So maybe we shouldn't do it at all.
Exactly.
Nope. And I guess while we're talking about stereotypes, let's go to the story where Fox News wanted to peddle a few. But then again, we will go to that story after we go to break.
Okay. All right, back on TYT. Let's start with Super Chat. Early Bird 42 says, this Tennessee senator being a perv comes as no surprise. What I want to know is who urinated on that seat. Because I think it was Justin Pearson did a speech where he said, like, all these people who didn't get kicked out. And I think he mentioned this guy who now resigned, but he also mentioned a guy who urinated on one of the seats of another member and apparently was not sanctioned at all. You're right, who the hell did that? But guy, you get away with anything if you're like, again, a powerful or wealthy right-wing legislator. So let's go to YouTube members now. Matthew Nothing writes in, rich Republicans resign when most people would already be in prison. Yeah, totally different standards. They're like, oh, they said he would get a 20-year sentence. All right, fine, he'll resign now. But of course he's not going to jail, don't be ridiculous. Right, where you get it. We've shown you 1,000 examples. Sampo's comment's kind of funny to me. He's like, "What is a family value?" We went for like decades in this country where no one ever defines anything, right? Family values. Yeah, you're right. What is that? I think it's loving your kids, loving your spouse, building something beautiful, a community together, teaching them the right things. They view family values as discriminating against gay people. What is socialism? I dare anyone on cable news to define it. Okay, the reaction would be, so all right. Gary Cooper writes in, during his confirmation hearing, Clarence Thomas testified under oath that he had never once thought about the legality of abortion. Come on, who could believe these preposterous lies? But yet, I watched those hearings. Back when I was in college, everyone pretended that every answer was real. Like, he's never thought about abortion. And I remember I was a Republican kid. I was even on Clarence Thomas's side, and I'm deeply ashamed of that. And I apologized to Anita Hill personally when she came on the show. But even I remember thinking, you never once thought about Roe v. Wade? No, or abortion at all. Come on. Okay, I don't know what happened with Anita Hill, but that's definitely not true. It's so absurd. All right, Bruce Baker says corporate profits will always trump religion. Same thing will happen with the postal worker who wants off on Sunday. Melissa Varduin asks, is there a link to vote for Anna for the Webby Award? I voted for TYT for Shorty Awards, woohoo. We appreciate it. Yes, there is a link, it's super easy. TYT.com/vote to vote on the Webbies for Anna and the viral clip, and TYT.com/shorties to win the Shorty Award. Thank you. TYT, Cenk, Adrian Alonso with you guys. Also, Serwin Celeste just became a member. We really appreciate it. You can do likewise by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube to become a YouTube member, or everybody can become a member at tyt.com/join. Alonso, real quick, where can people see? People can see Alonso on Rebel headquarters. Same thing with Adrian. But Alonso, where can people see your performances?
The best thing to do is go to alonsobowden.com, and that's a link to everything I have coming up. I'm going to be in New York at the Tower Theater in Times Square, and then I'm going to be at the I can't even remember where I'm going to be. The Chevalier Theater in Boston. That's Thursday and Friday, so a week from today. And then I'll be at the MGM Grand at the Brad Garrett Comedy Club the first week of May. So I will be, just go to alonsobowden.com and you can find me.
All right, awesome. All right, Adrian, what's next?
All right, check this out.
A hard turn to a sad and tragic story out of Kansas City, where a young man, 16 years old, appeared to have gone to the wrong residence. The man inside, the 84-year-old man inside, responded to the young man at his door with gunshots. This is a tragedy, but there is zero evidence that it is racist.
Yes, that is Fox News host Will Cain weighing in on the shooting of Ralph Yarl. That's the black high schooler who miraculously survived being shot in the head by Andrew Lester, an 84-year-old white neighbor of his. While the 16-year-old, as Cain noted, mistakenly went to the wrong address, and he ended up suffering with 2 shots to his body, which is such an incredibly tragic thing. But of course, Will Cain doesn't think that we can draw any conclusions whatsoever, despite the fact that this is something that happened in the South, and also we have an older white man and we have a young black boy.
You can imagine yourself on both sides of this door, going to the wrong residence to pick up your siblings, literally got the wrong address. And all of a sudden, as you're standing at the doorbell, shots ringing out. You can also imagine yourself on the other side, an 84-year-old man with a 6-foot-tall guy outside your door, reportedly pulling on the glass outer door to come inside. Here's what I would tell you. This is a tragedy, but there is zero evidence that it is racist. And that's the narrative today, that it is ringing a doorbell while being black. I'll reserve judgment, as we all should, until we get the facts to arrive at a conclusion.
I will not reserve judgment for Will Cain's nonsense, and the facts are pretty clear. It's clear that Ralph was not anywhere near 6 feet tall and also not pulling on the glass door. Check this out for CNN. So Ralph stands at 5 feet 8 inches. He also weighs 140 pounds, as high schoolers often do. That's according to Ralph's attorney, Lee Merritt, what he said on Tuesday night. Also, he's the least imposing kid that I've come across. He is a 16-year-old musician. He is not known for his physical prowess. And if many of you had seen his picture in the news circulating in media, it's clear that Ralph is not some linebacker at all. He is a small child, as would be the case for someone who is 16. And Ralph also maintains that he never tried to open or pull the door handle, which would be consistent with someone coming there to pick up their siblings by pressing a doorbell. And despite Cain's commentary, it really seems to be the case that the man here, Lester, that even his own family members are saying that he has racial bias really present in his past. Check this out.
Well, the prosecutor in this case has suggested that there was a racial component to it. Do you believe your grandfather is racist?
I believe he holds racist tendencies and beliefs. I feel like a lot of people of that generation are caught up in this 24-hour news cycle of fear and paranoia perpetuated by some other news stations. And he was fully into that, sit and watch Fox News all day, every day, blaring in his living room. And I think that stuff really kind of reinforces this negative view of minority groups and leads people to be it doesn't necessarily lead people to be racist, but it reinforces and galvanizes racist people and their beliefs.
Now, 84-year-old Lester probably feels very lucky now that he is becoming kind of a star at Fox News, where he can watch individuals like Will Cain tell lies about what happened that day, or at least the allegations out there that I'm sure Lester will put forward in his defense to make it seem like it was justifiable for him to shoot twice a 16-year-old boy who came knocking on his door. And we know that because Cain, well, he went ahead and doubled down on Twitter. He said this: "Here's what we know about what happened with Ralph Yarl. It was a tragedy. Here's what we don't know, that it had anything to do with race." He also continued, "Any conclusions about whether it's criminal or his motive or race are way out in front of the facts. But I'll tell you one thing I won't do. I won't listen to Benjamin Crump." Now he's referring to the civil rights attorney that represents Yarl. That's part of his legal team. I'll also tell you that Will Cain is an attorney. I used to work with him at ESPN. And Will Cain's a very smart man, but at the same time, it really seems that he's jumping into a Tucker Carlson boat here. Also, what a lot of people like to do, smart or not, they like to pretend racism isn't a factor. The fact is that race factors into every conversation, everything we do. It's how much it factors in. And that's the thing, is everything in our world operates on a spectrum. But to pretend that seeing a black person doesn't conjure certain thoughts in people's heads is to completely and totally lie. Just as to see a woman as opposed to a man conjure certain preconceived notions, thoughts, and theories. And once our society finally embraces and recognizes that, we can all start addressing some of the biases that are moving around in our subconscious and that often come out through our behavior. Cenk.
Yep. So there's two different problems with Will Cain's statement. One of them is he says, let's reserve judgment on this. I'm gonna tell you why that's a trick in a second. But the first one is a doozy on this one. He says, now you can imagine yourself on either side of this. And I thought, nope, I can't. So the 84-year-old guy took a couple of minutes. This is all according to police. Okay, so he says, well, I don't know what the facts are. Well, the police have already told you some of the very relevant facts. He waited for 2 or 3 minutes. In that 2 or 3 minutes, he could have called the cops if he was really afraid for his life. If I was afraid for my life, I wouldn't go anywhere near the door. I'd call the cops, and even if you had a weapon, get in the back of the house, wait with the weapon there in case the guy breaks in and you've got an advantage, he can't see. There's a ton of things you could have done other than, let me look at this guy. Oh, he's a 16-year-old, weighs 140 pounds, 5'8", tiny little kid. Let me open the door and blast him with a shotgun to the head. No, I literally can't imagine it. And look, guys, I'm not, for the right wingers out there, I'm not lying. Like, I don't know for you guys, hey, black kid showed up at my door. Well, I could easily imagine blowing his head off. For the rest of us, we don't think that way. But look, in my case, it's definitive. A guy broke into my house once, and and a lot of people gave me grief for not murdering him, but I didn't. In that case, it was a grown man, he was white. But my instinct was not, there's a guy in my house. My instinct was protect my family, but it was not, let me make sure I kill him while I got the chance. So I don't know how right-wingers think, if they look forward to it and so they can empathize with that guy, but that's not how the rest of us think. So second of all, on the 6 foot thing, he's like, there's no race here. But studies have shown that unfortunately it affects not just right-wingers, but people generally think that young black males are older than they appear and are taller than they appear. We can get back to those studies in a minute. So when he's a 5'8" little kid and he calls him 6 foot tall, that is the racism you claim doesn't exist. Because to you, no matter how small or fragile or skinny a black kid is, you're like, oh, that's a menace. There's a big giant black guy, 6 foot black guy, right? Dude, that's in your head. That's not real. And the reason it's in your head is because of those stereotypes. And then he says, oh, he was reportedly pulling on the door. No, nobody says that. The only person who said that he was pulling on the door was Lester, the alleged, attempted murderer. Yarl survived getting shot in the head. And so, no, he made it seem like the cops were saying that. Cops are not saying that. You know what else the cops said? It was racial. So that brings us back to reserving judgment. Whenever, like in old days when there were some Muslim shootings in America, they're like, ban all Muslims! Immediately, no reserving of judgment. Now there was a couple of trans shooters, they're like, take away guns from trans people, they're mentally ill! They say without a trace of irony, right? But when it comes to a racist 84-year-old who shot a black kid in the head for no reason, like, whoa, reserve judgment, we don't know what's happening here, okay? And he's like, we don't know if he said in the tweets, we don't even know whether it's criminal. You think that it might not be criminal to shoot a 16-year-old in the head that didn't do anything, that didn't have a weapon, that wasn't trying to break into your house, to shoot him in the head. You think that might not be criminal. Well, that tells me not that Lester isn't dangerous, it tells me that Will Cain is dangerous.
Alonzo.
There is, there's so much here that I can laugh and I can lose it at the same time. So where do I start? First of all, 5'8" is 6 feet to the right wingers because Ron DeSantis is 5'9", who claims to be 6 feet. Now, Adrian, you said you worked with Will Cain at ESPN. If you worked for ESPN, you've seen large black men, okay? So there's no mistaking this or whatever. But I'll tell you what the stereotype is, besides what Cenk said, and Cenk, it doesn't just apply to young black men, it applies to young black women. They're always assumed to be 10 years older than they are and sexually advanced and all of that. But here's the thing. The superhuman strength, okay? Every black man that gets shot has superhuman strength. That excuse is built in right away. I know because I'm a large black man. I've had superhuman strength since I was, 19. You say this isn't racial, there's no proof it's racial. Well, his grandson said it's racial. Okay, forget about the fact that he shot through the door. And when you want to talk about mental illness, this is the mental illness of our society, all right? In the past week, we've had 3 of these shootings, one in New York, one in this one, and the one in Texas, for things that people used to say, I'm sorry or excuse me. That's what that used to be the reaction to someone knocking on the wrong door, to someone turning around in your driveway, to someone reaching for your car door handle. We used to say, excuse me, I'm sorry. Now we attempt to kill you for it. So the mental illness is our society. Will Cain is on Fox News. He's preaching to the choir. This is nonsense. I am so tired of having to even give this any words, any credibility. Will Cain, it's a racist old man who shot a black man at his door. Don't pretend it's anything else. And the insult, the feigned ignorance is the most insulting part. Because Adrian, I agree with you. Will Cain knows this is bull. He knows it's a lie, and he's just spouting it because he's preaching to the choir and he wants to sell his books or build his website or whatever. I am so tired of young black men being shot for being young black men. You know why Will Cain has no empathy here? You talk about imagining things, because he can't imagine it happening to him or anyone who looks like him, because he knows a young white kid at the door does not get murdered, and if he is shot by a black man, that black man's going straight to jail. So I've had it and I'm done. And if I see Will Cain, I'll slap the shit out of him and show him what a large black man with superhuman strength can do. Bitch ass.
All right, that is Alonzo's opinion. Of course, we don't sanction violence, and so I'm gonna say Alonzo should not do that. But
Alonzo, if you fear for your safety, I think you should defend yourself whenever necessary, because clearly when these individuals are always so afraid.
Because the person's black. I'm sorry to cut you off. I didn't mean to step on you, but that's their fear, right? That they're standing their ground. The fact that you are black or brown, they instantly fear for their safety.
Yes, and that's where the racism is built in. And as you had mentioned earlier, in terms of young black people being assumed to be older or more mature, that's the adultification that follows us. And then if we're not adultified, then we are criminalized and we are made out to be the villain and the bad guy. And it's a thought that we're always up to something nefarious. That is the racism that follows us. And it is imbued in every action we take by virtue of the ignorance that is white supremacy. And yet we continue to suffer as a result of it. It's disgusting.
I gotta say one more thing, Adrian. Sorry, Cenk. But regarding your past history at ESPN, I'm just betting this wouldn't be Will Cain's opinion in an NFL locker room. Why do I think he would not spout this off if he was in the New York Giants locker room? Just saying.
So Alonzo, we're out of time, but I wanna, in the bonus episode, I wanna ask you a question. Like you said, I'm large, you're large, but I'm not black, you are. And so when people say like, oh, afraid of a large black male. I mean, you've had to live with that your whole life, as if it's okay to shoot you. So look, I want to talk about it a little bit more fulsome conversation in the bonus episode. TYT.com/join to become a member, or hit the join button below on YouTube. Members, we'll see you there in a minute.
Indisputable has been named the fastest growing